I like that. There's Malcolm Jenkins. There he is. Former Buckeye.
Malcolm comes in. He's an activist. He's a community.
What did he get into here?
Malcolm is he activist. He in the community. He ain't playing
I'm talking
no games.
about porn stars.
And this dude
here
comes in here talking about Steel and all this other.
I mean, it does. Steel. That is a good football name, though, don't you think, Malcolm? Steel Chamber.
It's definitely good. It's entertainment. It's meant for entertainment. Let's just put it that way.
It certainly is.
It's not his real first name, so it doesn't really.
What is his real first name?
I forgot what they said, but it's not.
Clarence.
It's Clarence. Is it Clarence?
No, it's just the.
I was about to say. Yeah.
Hey, Malcolm, thank you so much for joining us. So much to get into with you. Let's start with this. We just had a conversation. Yep. We've obviously been talking about Lamar Jackson here for about the last 20 minutes, and we made all our predictions that if Tyler Huntley, these guys refuse to call him Snoop, even though it's his nickname. No. If Tyler Huntley is the starting quarterback for the Ravens, Tyvis said the Ravens win 8 games. G. Bush said they'd win 6 games. I said they'd win 5 games with him as the starter as opposed to Lamar. What's your best prediction on that?
I mean, I can't call a number of games, but I think the consensus is that the Ravens are not as good a football team without Lamar Jackson at the helm. I think that's what we can all agree on.
Yeah.
Whether that takes you for 5, 6, 7 games, it's still losing. At the end of the day, I think that's what. I don't think anybody predicts them to get better without him.
Malcolm, I'm looking at this situation, and if you're Lamar Jackson, don't you look around and say, hold on, let me get this right. So y'all said I was a receiver at first. I came into the league. I lost a lot of money because I didn't get drafted in the top 15 or so. I'm late first round pick. I come in and show you what I could do. I've won an MVP. I have a 75% winning percentage when I'm on the field. I am the offense. You haven't got me no receivers. My running back's been dinged up. He has to be sitting here thinking like, well, do you guys believe in me or you don't believe in me? Do you think this is something that goes to, whether he's going to be there long term if he does not sign this or does not report, or do you think he's destined to go somewhere else?
Well, I think hopefully by the time he's gotten to this point, he's made up in his mind what's most important to him, right? And I think he has to realize that this is just business. So while you can stack all of these things up on a table, that doesn't mean that they're going to move, and he has to be okay with that. So as long as he knows who he is, I think then whatever happens. Because the reality is he's getting ready to set the precedent for the environment of the league going forward, representing himself, doing it the way that he did, betting on himself and the style of play is going to set the market for everybody who's behind him. So we can't go into this expecting him to get, the red carpet laid out for him, that he's not going to have resistance or his value is not going to be challenged. He's just going to have to stand on it. And, hopefully that works out in his favor.
Malcolm, first of all, I wanted to tell you, thank you for coming on this show. Our executive producer said that you are one of his favorite Eagles to play. So Steve Becker.
Huge Eagles fan.
Yeah, Steve Becker, I handled that for you. Transitioning to the Cleveland Browns, obviously, we just got Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator. You played for Jim Schwartz, and he credits you as one of his favorite players. Tell us about his defense and what we can expect to see next year for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, my favorite thing about Jim was his ego. He was able to check, and that's very, very hard for somebody who's as decorated as he is. I played for a lot of coordinators who really only know their way of playing defense, and one of his things, which helped me a lot, and we work well with this, was our versatility, his ability to see what he has at his disposal and build a defense that complements that. So we started off in a single high defense, where it put a lot of pressure on the corners, but gave us, we were really good against the run and really solid in the middle of the field. And with injuries on the outside, he was able to change that to where we still presented the same thing to the offense, but it was more of a cover 2 shell or roll defense that gave our corners some relief, but still allowed us to be stout. So his starts with up front, and when you got a guy like Miles out there who can rush the passer, it's going to start with those 4 guys up front being able to get pressure, and then he'll build the coverage off of that based off of the skill set that he has available to him.
Malcolm, here's the important question. How is Rutgers ever going to get good at football? You grew up in their backyard. You went to high school in the backyard of Rutgers, and you were like, Rutgers, forget it, I'm going to Ohio State. They're never going to be good, are they?
Well, I mean, I think you're onto it. It's just keeping the homegrown talent
Yeah.
staying in New Jersey. I think if you look at my class alone, the 2005 Jersey high school class, we had about 6 first rounders, and I think only maybe one of them went to Rutgers. I think it was Kenny Britt. So
Britt, yeah.
you know, you had Cody Twins, myself, Brian Cushing, BJ Raji, Sean Green,
him, yeah.
Deshaun Marino, all these guys, all Jersey, and they're all over the country. So they can figure out how to keep them home. We'll be all right.
We're talking with Malcolm Jenkins, and you know, you win 2 Super Bowls in your career. Obviously, one with New Orleans, one with Philadelphia. I feel like this is a crazy question, but I want to ask you anyway. Is there one more meaningful than the other?
You know, no. I think it's especially because, you know, both of them were the first in those franchises' history. So to be able to bring like that first championship to a city is something special, especially two cities that are as attached to their football team as New Orleans and Philadelphia is. So, you know, I think there are 2 unique fan bases. I think if you want to look at like overall just the hype and probably the buildup, Philly is a fun place to win a Super Bowl in. But New Orleans is not bad either, especially when Mardi Gras was right off the heels of the Super Bowl win. So that celebration was like no other. So I think, you know, for me, they are special in different ways. My role on both of those teams were different. That was my rookie year for the one with the Saints, where I was more of a contributor and kind of I was watching these things unfold. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Philadelphia, you know, I was front line, a captain, very much involved in the direction of that team. But both obviously have made an impression on me, but, you know, hold a special place for me.
You know, Malcolm, when you during a couple of years back when the whole thing with taking a knee and kneeling happened, you know, it seems like, and this is just from the outside looking in, you came out of that relatively unscathed. There's a lot of other individuals that obviously, you know, Colin Kaepernick and some other individuals that, you know, they literally didn't make it back to the league. They literally weren't playing anymore. How was that experience for you after you took a knee and after you were very vocal about that? And what did you receive any backlash or anything that maybe people don't really necessarily know about?
Yeah, I think unscathed is probably a light way of putting it. I think Colin was probably the only one who really sacrificed his livelihood, you know, his job was really affected by what he did. Everybody else, you know, either continued their career with kind of, you know, some eyes on them. But for me, I think one of the things that helped me was I was in an organization that just had the perfect storm. There was so much going on politically in Philadelphia. You had the example of Meek Mill in jail while we were going to a Super Bowl. We're winning. Jeff Lurie's the team owner who created an environment where he allowed us to speak our mind and use our platform. So we were able to go a little bit further than other people. And it wasn't just me. I was surrounded by, you know, Chris Long's, Torrey Smith's, the Mike Bennett's of the world. So I had people around me as well, where some other guys were isolated. So I think it was really just a perfect storm that allowed me to consistently be a voice, to consistently take stands, because I was supported and in the right situation.
Malcolm, obviously the Eagles came a little short this year against Kansas City, and I was really pulling for y'all. I thought y'all had this thing won. What do you got to say about the breakdown from a coverage standpoint? You know, when Kansas City kept hitting those motions, and the Eagles were rolling coverage. What do you think they could have done better to play those 2 plays that left 2 wide open touchdowns?
Well, I think, you know, when early in the game you play man-to-man and Kelce just immediately takes over the game, you know, you're shell-shocked from then on. You're going to play a soft zone and make sure that they dink and dunk their way. And if it's anything that we've seen Kansas City able to do is tear apart zones, especially when they have a little bit of time. And I think, you know, I know to my surprise, Patrick Mahomes had way more time in the pocket than I anticipated coming into this game. So when you add, you know, the lack of pressure that was made up front with a little bit of soft zone coverage, you can expect that there are going to be completions, and that's what Kansas City does well: get the ball to their guys in space and make something happen with it. You know, it was a well-fought game. I thought both teams made adjustments, both teams made plays. just there at the end, one team made more than the other.
Malcolm, you played football your whole life, and then last year you don't play for the first time after a long NFL career. What was that like? Like, especially when the season started, training camp started, whatever. What was that like for you?
It was oddly comfortable. I got a little bit kind of disheveled right around training camp. I didn't know what was happening. It was like late July, and all of a sudden I just got an urge to work out and get in the gym and get focused and read books. And I'm like, what's going on? And then one of my teammates who's also retired said, hey, your body's used to getting ready for training camp. That's all that is. And so once you understand and can identify some of these, urges due to muscle memory, I really, enjoyed this vantage point, being a fan, watching, kind of these things unfold from a third person view, and not being in the mix, not having control of anything that's happening in the game gives me more anxiety. Like I understand why there's fandom and why people, are so tied to the game. And I like it. I'm not complaining.
Well, that's good. It's good to be able to adjust so quickly. Some guys can't, so that's awesome. Took
some time.
Yeah, I want to talk about one of your former teammates, Michael Thomas. Obviously, another Buckeye. He's a great NFL player. Last few years, he's barely played. He's been hurt. Obviously, he wants out of New Orleans. He's a free agent now. Do you think he's got another big season in him? Not just a guy, but like a lead wide receiver guy?
Yeah, I think a big season, that's not hard to do when you're Michael Thomas, right? We've seen him be able to just take off. I think the biggest question mark to if he can have another season is, can he stay on the field for an entire season? And that's just been really the hard part about the last 2 years is we haven't gotten a complete season from him. But I think when we get a complete season from him, everybody expects for him to be the Michael Thomas that we've seen. His work ethic, his abilities have not changed over those years. We want to see how he looks after these injuries, but I think when it comes down to if that question is answered, that he's available for an entire season, I think he can really get back to form to what we're used to.
Well, Malcolm, we know, this past year while you've been, watching the NFL, you also have written a book, What Winners Won't Tell You. Tell us about that process, and what we can expect when we read this book.
Yeah, I mean, the process is a little bit different than what I've been used to. But one of the good things that I've learned, through the game of football is to take a lot of notes. And when you play for as long as I did, 13 seasons, but been playing football since I was 7 years old, you learn, a life through the game of football. And going through the things that I've experienced both in family, on the field, off the field, business, there's so much that I feel like, needs to be put in context for those who are coming behind me, those who are kind of navigating those same roads. And so as a bridge builder and a storyteller, I figure what better way than to tell through my own story kind of these lessons that I've learned that really put into context what people just saw me come out of in that 13-year career.
Malcolm, one of the big things that big story was the DeMar Hamlin situation. It kind of spawned this conversation about contracts, conversations about healthcare, conversations about players, longevity in terms of both of those things after they retire. First and foremost, how were you to navigate those waters in terms of your finances? And two, what is the biggest thing that you would tell younger players in terms of money and how to move in their career? Because there is no guaranteed contracts.
Yeah, man. And the quickest way that I can try to answer these things is that one, players have to realize that they have the power to get guaranteed contracts if they want. They got to stop asking the league to give it to them. That's not how negotiations work. The NBA got it because players band together and decided they weren't going to take contracts that weren't guaranteed. It's not in their collective bargaining agreement. They didn't negotiate for it. They just took it. And that's what players can do. So that's just on that. When it comes to, navigating finances, realistically, I played long enough to make up for the mistakes that I made early on. And I think that, unfortunately, that's really the narrative for a lot of guys. The first contract, no matter where you come from, what color you are, what your background is, we're just really not prepared to deal with, that amount of assets and things going on while we're still trying to professionally excel. But eventually you learn. And so I think the biggest thing that I can tell athletes coming up now is to talk to each other, to invest with each other. Group economics is something that the ownership does. It's something that people with money do all the time. They share information, they share money, they co-invest. That way they limit their risk and they get into more different things. But if you go into an NFL locker room, most of the time, talking about money is taboo. It's something that we don't talk about. When we lose money, we'll watch our teammates go to that same person and invest with that same person. We all lose money. We don't collectively do things, and really that's the key to success. So when you don't know, you're a rookie, you don't know a lot, invest or learn from the people that are around you that understand your networks, understand what you're going through, and can do things together. That's really the easiest way.
I didn't even know. That's crazy. So you mean that's the thing that most wealthy individuals do is when you common-minded, common likeness, they usually share like, hey, there's a good investment opportunity over here. I would have never thought that was the case.
What if you tried to talk to a younger teammate, like when you went back to New Orleans or even in Philadelphia when you were a veteran by then, if you tried to talk to a teammate, like a rookie or second-year guy, would they have not heard you? I mean, like, how would that have gone if you had tried it?
Well, I mean, I've talked to guys when they're ready for it. It comes with education and experience. Again, I'm able to talk about it because I played long enough to make those mistakes and be able to recover from them. Where the majority of our guys, I mean, you're talking about a league where the average player is in it for less than 3 years. Yeah. So you're trying to educate guys who are literally 2 years away from retirement the second they come in. It's the dynamics are way different, and then the range of, even economics and the status. You got a bare minimum player next to, somebody making, $100 million contract. Yeah. It's the conversations are even different when we're talking about how we're able to even be on different levels, but everybody's in that same locker room, and it creates a unique kind of dynamic, even a budget to get paid only at this time during the year and being able to make that stretch for a lifetime is something that nobody else but these particular athletes have to deal with, and it creates unique problems.
Mikey, go ahead, man.
Hey, Malcolm, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it, man. Quick question. So you played with Jim Schwartz, and Schwartz in his press conference mentioned you as one of his favorite players he ever coached. You guys had that coach-player relationship where you were an extra coach on the field. What goes into kind of developing that relationship with the defensive coordinator or coach? Is it an immediate connection? Is it developed over 3-4 years? And kind of how that formulates into becoming a coach on the field for a certain defensive coordinator?
Yeah, I think it comes with, for me, it took about 2 seasons with Jim. The first one, I thought when he first met me, I told him I wanted to play the nickel. I was probably 215 pounds, and he wasn't really familiar with my game. And he just looked at me and said I was too heavy to play the nickel. But, after a training camp and then after seeing, me move and be able to do things and understanding my process and how much, film I watched, how much preparation, I put into it, he was able to trust the things that I was saying and vice versa. And once 2 people put their egos down and are more concerned about winning more than they are about being the reason that you win, that's when you can really have like that collaboration where players are having input and more ownership in the defense. Coordinators are able to set them up and put them in positions because players can tell you, hey, what they're good at, what matchups they're feeling good about, what leverage they need. And you can, better suit and put them in positions to play fast and keep it simple. And he's been somebody who, I think is open to that kind of dialogue and relationships. And every great defense that I've studied, that I've been a part of, has always had that ability to take 1 to 2 other players who are extensions of the coach and put them on the field to really have that extra layer of, security on your defense, whether it be for calls or just keeping people lined up.
I'm glad you went there and talked about your experience as a nickel, because here at the Cleveland Browns, we got a little dilemma going on at the nickel position. We got 3 corners, all who feels that they want to play outside. And I get it because, obviously corners, you get the big money from playing outside. But when you look at this Cleveland Brown roster, is there a guy that you can look at and say he can be like the Malcolm Jenkins of this defense? I don't know how familiar you are with the Browns roster, though.
Yeah, I won't go too far because I'm not that familiar with the secondary. But I would say, to me, one of the things, it used to be that when you're chasing the bag, like for sure you want to be considered a corner. But realistically, when you're talking about, your value to a team, and this is kind of how I made my claim in this league, was the more that you can do, the more valuable you are for teams. If you can play the nickel, you're an undersized linebacker, you're playing strong safety at times, you're playing corner. That's 3 different positions that you can occupy at any point in time. So if a linebacker goes down, you're the next person up. If your safety goes down, the next person up. Corner goes down, you stay on the field, and that makes you more valuable than your corner, who you're going to lose for a game or 2 throughout the year, and he may only show up 75% of those games. But you got a guy that you can always put in positions to dominate, a third receiver, to dominate a tight end or running back. If you're a corner that can do that, the value of that is rising in this league. At least you look at players like C.J. Garner-Johnson, who I think is a good example of that, being able to start his career in the nickel, make a bunch of plays there, and then all of a sudden his transition to safety was pretty easy. But he's still a corner who can do all of these different things, and him hitting the market is going to really open that up, I think, for a few people. So the nickel used to be one of those spots where you didn't want to wear that scarlet letter, but the more you can do, the more valuable you are in this league.
Malcolm, the Browns' defensive line last year was really bad outside of Myles Garrett. Everybody else has struggled. They really have, backup caliber players on that line besides Myles Garrett. He's great, but he's getting no help. So obviously we all want the Browns to target some of those Eagles defensive linemen. We're thinking, well, they're veterans, they're free agents. I think they got like 3 free agents on that D-line. Obviously, they all have relationships with Jim Schwartz. Do you think Jim's relationship with those guys, assuming the money's in the same ballpark, will be an advantage for the Browns to maybe get 1 or even 2 of those guys to come here?
Well, I think if anything, you've at least got the relationship. But to your point, these guys they're the most valuable that they've ever been in their career, coming off of the season that D-line just had. Going all the way to the Super Bowl, that price is going to be nice. So to get, I think 2 of them might be a little greedy.
Probably.
But but I do think, if you're looking at the guys who are out there, they're definitely a decorated bunch. Guys who can come in and add value from a leadership standpoint, from a productivity standpoint, and obviously fit the defense. I think if I'm Jim, obviously I'm looking right there in Philadelphia to see if I can fill a void to add some depth on that D line.
Now we got to discuss something. We got to figure something out. Now, Ohio State,
Go Bucks.
The Buckeyes say that they DBU. Now, a couple years ago, it used to be in Miami, right? It used to be Miami.
A
couple years ago.
20 years ago or so.
Yeah.
See how they talking to y'all
You're
down
getting old,
there?
G. You're getting old.
Now, here's what I'm going to do, man. I need you to name, because there's a lot of them, your top 5 Buckeye DBs. Now, you can't use this guy and you can't put yourself in there. Top 5 Buckeye DBs. That's safeties and corners. Y'all got a lot of them.
Yeah, I'm going to go Antoine Winfield.
Okay.
Marshawn Lattimore.
Great.
You got to go to the great Jack Tatum.
Yes.
But if I didn't want to go there, I could always go Sean Springs.
Yep.
We can go in, Killer Mike Doss from the national championship. Y'all remember him well.
G. Bush played high school. Played in high school.
That's
with
one of my best friends. Shout out to Mike Doss. And I don't know how they let Mike Doss get a dark shield. They let you get it off too before it's time. I don't know how.
I don't know how they pulled that.
How you get that off?
I'm just saying, you got to know people. But man, I feel like we put a first rounder out almost every draft, if not every other draft. So, I think when you just look at it, how many we put in, it's really only LSU is in the other conversation.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, yeah.
But anybody else is all cap. It's Ohio State and LSU. And quite frankly, obviously, where I lean. And I think but if you talk about longevity, I think, that list goes on and on for decades. It wasn't just the last 10, 20, even 30 years for Ohio State. We've been putting DBs out like a factory for sure.
Malcolm, what's your go-to pizza joint in Piscataway?
Man, I gave up cheese a long time ago, so I've been real weird with my pizzas. I get it with no cheese. But I mean, I was always a Stelton. Stelton, it's a pizzeria on Stelton Road, in Piscataway, just close to the neighborhood. That was the closest one.
Malcolm, you played with Cleveland native Jason Kelce for a while in Philadelphia. He's quite the character. You got any Jason Kelce stories you can share with us real quick? Maybe your favorite?
Plenty. No, I think my favorite Kelce story is after the Super Bowl, the parade going down Broad Street. We all started on these, tour buses. And about halfway through, I looked to my right and Kelce's crowd surfing on his back.
That's
in
crazy.
A full mummer down Broad Street.
Crazy.
I was like, you know what? That is fitting for not only our team but for Jason specifically. Yeah, it was natural for him.
When the Cavs won the championship with LeBron in 2016, Cleveland had not had that was the first championship in 60 years in Cleveland. So we couldn't for the parade here. The parade was delayed by an hour because we didn't have what are those things called, the blue panels you put to keep the crowd on the
barricades.
The barricades, good thing of the word. We didn't even have them. and people were just in the street, you couldn't even get down.
Unprepared.
I think LeBron was starving by the time he got to the end, man. He couldn't get any food, he couldn't get anything to drink. It was crazy, but it was wild. Those things are nuts. What was that like being part of the parade, being in the parade? Both times.
Man, yeah, the first time was similar to that. I think the parade route was maybe 3/4 of a mile, and it took us 4 or 5 hours to get through. It was crazy. The second time, I was more prepared. I understood what was coming. I made sure I got a cart of alcohol on my bus specifically, so we didn't have to make runs in between, because they don't give you things on those floats. It's just water. So we had to make it a little bit more fun. But the second time around was well prepared, had everything ready, had a good time, took it all in. The fans were crazy, and there's a straight route down Broad Street. People on the roofs, on signs, poles, trees. It's a crazy scene.
Let me ask you this: yeah. What is your thoughts on the current state of Ohio State right now? I gotta know.
Gotta beat Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, I think, our concern for the lab, we've been spoiled, getting really close to these natties and thinking about the playoffs. And even when we've had some, our defense wasn't right for a little bit, things weren't right, but we were cool because we're always competing. But we weren't losing to Michigan, and now dropping 2 in a row is just unacceptable. So I think that's really the first, goal is show and prove there. And then we can have a conversation about, all of the other semantics and smaller things. But we're not used to being on that. It's been a while since we've been on this end of it. And that's got to change.
That's why I like you, because somebody asked me that question on the Buckeye Cruise, and I said exactly what you just said.
Hey, the rest of it is just semantics until we get that done. Because if we can't get past the team up north, then we got bigger problems.
Malcolm, are you interested in coaching?
No, not right now. I tell everybody I left the game of football with money still on the table. So if I wanted to work really, really hard, I would have just kept playing. Right now, they put in a lot of time and they take a lot of time away from their family. And I think that's really the antithesis of what I'm trying to do right now. But I do know that I have, an affinity for the game. I've got a ton of knowledge that I love to kind of share, especially to younger players. Teaching and coaching is something I'm passionate about. But right now, I don't know that it's in the stars for this period of my life.
Malcolm, last thing. What was your reaction? 2-part question. What was your reaction when the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson and gave him the new contract that was all guaranteed? And do you think this year we will see the Deshaun Watson that we saw in Houston?
I think the reaction was my normal reaction to any team that I see make moves like that. This is a team that's desperate to win and is going for it, right? Yeah. They're not shy about it, not gonna pull any punches, which is fine. I think the expectations are going to be unbelievably high on Deshaun. And I think even now we're glorifying maybe what we even saw from him, in Houston. I thought he's, is definitely a quarterback who can lead your team, especially when you build things around him. But he's still a quarterback with a lot of things that needs to be developed and things that we have yet to see kind of take that next leap. I think his legs and his athletic ability give him a huge room, a huge margin for error. But as we know, in this league, to be competitive long term, we're going to have to see a lot of those other things develop. And that comes with building around him. That comes with building a system that keeps him protected, keeps him in good situations, and also the development from his own self as a player. And I think that's just yet to be seen.
Great stuff, Malcolm. We really appreciate you taking the
man.
time, man. That was
Thanks,
awesome.
Malcolm. Appreciate
Thanks
you.
so much, Malcolm.
Appreciate you
Go
having me.
Bucks.